Hello and welcome to this very special show. For a reason, we are calling it the Bovine intervention because the Supreme Court has today imposed a 3-month-long stay on the centre's new cattle trading norms, which has barred sale of cattle, remember, for slaughter in an open market. The order comes in after the Environment Ministry's notification was challenged by cattle traders all across the country, and in a big step down, the centre has also informed the top court that it will make changes and resubmit the amendments to the law by the end of next month. While this would come as an interim relief for meat suppliers in the leather industry, remember, cow vigilante attacks has been a sporadic rise from the time this ban was implemented. We've seen incidents both in Haryana and Jharkhand, men being lynched on account of carcasses and all of that. To discuss the Supreme Court stay and its ramifications, and did the government get it wrong in the first place? On all of that, we've got three very special guests. We've got Richard Mahapatra, Managing Director, Down to Earth, somebody who's written extensively on that cattle slaughter ban. We've got Priyanka Chaturvedi from the Congress party, and we've got Gopal Krishna Agarwal from the ruling benches, the BJP. Thank you each one of you for being with us. And Gopal Krishna Agarwal, I think it's only fair that I begin by asking you, does the stay by the Supreme Court come as a big setback to your party, to this national ban that was put in place?
No, I don't think. The government had already, after the notification on 23rd, the government on 27th has also clarified that there are several representations which the government is itself examining, and now also in the Supreme Court also additional Solicitor General has said that there is no need for, we are not even asking for a stay to the High Court decision, we are ourselves re-examining it. At the first place, I would also like to mention that the initial 23rd May notification was also when it was Supreme Court had at various earlier situations and positions had asked the government to come out with rules and regulations to implement the cruelty against animals. They themselves wanted that there is a very bad situation with regard to animal trade in the country, and government should come out with proper rules and regulations and so that it can be implemented properly. On that basis, the government had come out with a notification clearly defining the cattle trade with regard to particular areas, market, which are notified by the state government, and that notification pertains to that market area only. Then it was for the state government to decide. So there are issues. Government also understand there was a big difference.
Mr. Agarwal, I have a question to ask you on that intervention, if I may, Mr. Agarwal. And that question has to do with the fact that why did the government have to wait till the stay came in from the Supreme Court? Why could the government not proactively say that this notification stands in abeyance, we will not deal with this, considering this employs, this is not about animal cruelty, this is about impact on livelihood of thousands and thousands of people all across this country. And the central government seemed to be blissfully unaware of this. Why did it take the Supreme Court stay to act? Why could the government not proactively say this notification is going to be aborted?
No, but then you should see why the notification came. It was the Supreme Court insistence that government should come out with a notification, and the government had put this notification in the public domain in January 2017, and finally notification came after 5 months. The people who had objections or they had some other reservations, they should have come out proactively, told the government. Why the government is now transparently making all rules and regulation and putting them in the public domain initially and asking people to comment. There are issues. I think there were further when the notification came, there are issues which came to light to the government, and they themselves are rethinking it. At one point of time, there was one particular aspect, some of the aspects which were considered by the Environment Ministry. There were animal people who are for the protection of the animals, they were pressurizing. So there are several issues. It was in the public domain. Those who had objection, they should have been also proactively and come out with their objections. The government would have taken care of in 23rd May notification. Still,
But
the government is open. It has found that it has a ramifications to livelihood of many people. It has affect the trade. So now the government has agreed to revisit it. So it's a very transparent way. The
why should
government
the
is not
government wait
adamant
for
on
people's
anything, and
intervention?
any
Why should the government
notification
wait that why don't
has
people have
various
objections and come to it? The government should do it proactively. The government should look into livelihood issues proactively. So I don't quite buy the point that the government waited for clarifications to come in, and
So
because they did not come in, they went ahead with this.
Supriya,
Okay, Priyanka Chaturvedi.
No,
Mr. Agarwal, just hang on for 1 second. I'm going to get a quick reaction from the Congress party. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to get a quick reaction from the Congress party and take this discussion forward.
So, all right,
Priyanka Chaturvedi, you want to react to the opening remarks of Mr. Agarwal?
Yes. So, yes, his opening remarks have almost lasted as a speech which he is giving to the people of this country, where they are trying to justify the wrongs that they did through this notification. Yes, we agree that there was a Supreme Court request saying that there should be a proper framework, proper guideline to ensure that prevention of cruelty to animals should be upheld. But that does not mean, under the garb of that Supreme Court order, you totally ignore the economics behind cattle trade. We must understand it's a $16 billion trade that India stands to lose if we implement these thought of agenda that was set by this government. And what also happened post the order that came across, the notification that came across, we saw lynching happening all across the country. We saw mobs gathering at places and beating up people just because they believed that they alleged that people who were carrying legally they were carrying cows was lynched almost or beaten up violently. So this kind of justification, if they felt that people were objecting to it, this notification could have been withdrawn. Now let's say when you speak for people and asking for their feedback, you could have first, before sending out this notification, the government could have very well interacted with various sections that would be impacted by it and spoken to them and come out with the best framework that worked in the interest of the country and interest of the cattle, interest of animals, interest of economics of this nation. However, that didn't happen. So that is when you question the reason behind this notification and you question the intent of this government, which became pretty clear on both fronts, whether the economics front of it or how it impacted the rural economy or how it impacted people on ground and created further schisms in an already, I think, torn society.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to take the politics in just a while from now, and we'll get Mr. Agarwal to respond to that. But if I may, please get in Mr. Mahapatra, and I want to ask you a very frank question. How big a reprieve do you really believe this is for people and for stakeholders in that business? Mr. Richard Mahapatra, I want to get your quick reactions on how big a respite this is, and then we should go ahead and address the politics of it.
I think it's a big respite, definitely, because as you know the livestock trade is much bigger than the crop economy. And this was a response of the farmers who actually have been facing consistent drought, and the earning from crops and food grain was dwindling, so and the livestock was compensating. In that way, it's a big respite. At least there is a legal lift of the restrictions. But at the same time, the other side, like the free market needs a good sentiment, this economy also needs a supportive sentiment. And if you look at it, I think one part is taken care of. At least the government and the other stakeholders will come back and discuss and can go for another thing. What the government is saying, they want to relook at the regulations. But what about the non-government, this extra state people who are actually chasing the cattle traders everywhere, and that sentiment is, I think we need to somehow control.
Okay. Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, there are two questions that Priyanka Chaturvedi and Richard Mahapatra are putting before you. From the economics, we are once again moving to the politics of this cattle ban. That it's all right, the government will sit down with stakeholders and they'll do negotiations, and then amendments will be made and this law will be amended by the end of next month, and hopefully that will sort out the air. But the other question that both Priyanka Chaturvedi and Richard Mahapatra have raised is, government is just one stakeholder. The other stakeholder is these extra constitutional authorities, the cow vigilantes, who take law into their own hands. And we've seen various examples of that, especially after this law came into force. Who's going to address that? That is also the big question, is it not? Because this is not just about eating beef or not eating beef. This is an entire livelihood. I mean, just to put it in perspective for our viewers, livestock employs about 8.8% of India's population. It contributes to 5% of India's GDP. Its contribution is more in agri-economy than the crops that are sowed and reaped. So all I'm trying to ask you is, what happens to those extra constitutional authorities, those cow vigilantes who take law into their own hands every now and then?
That's the thing, that cow vigilantes or Gaurakshas which are taking law into hand, we completely despise them. That's not the right. They should be, the law will take its course. PM has also clarified. If we complicate too many issues into the situation, it becomes very difficult. One thing is, we do not support the cow vigilantes or anybody taking law into their hand. The law should take its course. They should be punished. PM has said, we are saying, BJP spokesperson have everybody said that this is not the correct thing. The second thing is that the economics cannot decide everything. What about the cruelty towards animals? And what the government notification says about, it talks about prevention of cruelty against animals, their condition of livelihood, the condition of their how they are kept there, are their cruelty to them. That's very important. Ultimately, if it is affecting the livelihood of many people, you cannot say that they can do cruelty to any animals. And it is not only for particularly cow. So if you mix too many things, it's the politics of the opposition. They are taking advantage of particular situation of the people, and those Gaurakshas are also taking advantage of the sentiment, religious sentiment. These are two different things. Notification has nothing to do with killing of cows. The banning of cow killing is already there. It's a state subject, and many states have banned them since long. And this notification does not ban the killing of animals or anything. It is particularly with regard to marketplace, how that marketplace should operate. State government are responsible for clarifying those things, and it talks of prevention of cruelty to animals which are sold, purchased, sold and purchased at those marketplaces. What is wrong in it? But if somebody is misusing in it, those things to take benefit for their personal, their own agenda, it is for the government to control, and that's the government is taking responsibility for. If you mix that notification with cow vigilantes and what the opposition is saying, that banning of cow slaughter, these are different things, and this notification does not talk about killing of or cow slaughter or anything. And it only talks of regulating the markets, animal markets which are operating through, and it also talks of smuggling. You see in the West Bengal borders how cruelly animals are being treated and smuggled to the borders.
Mr. Agarwal, I'll come back to you about the smuggling part of this, but let me get in a reaction from Priyanka Chaturvedi. Mr. Agarwal here alleges Priyanka Chaturvedi that the opposition, which includes the Congress party, is trying to take advantage of them. The BJP is washing its hands of these cow vigilantes. They have nothing to do with them. They are in fact denouncing any violence in the name of cow protection. How are you going to defend your opposition at this stage? Are you not leveraging the opportunity there is to leverage here? This is merely become
I'm sorry. This is
Supriya, this
no, please, can I speak? Mr. Agarwal, you've spoken for quite some time. You've been dominating this discussion most of the time. You've taken most of the time. Allow others to speak, sir. Supriya, can I speak, or
Please
would
go
Mr.
ahead.
Agarwal want to continue talking?
Sure, please go ahead. No, please go ahead. Let's have you talk.
So firstly, when he says about, when he talks about taking advantage, I am sorry, sir, we were not the ones who issued this notification. It came from the government of India. If the government did not want to give any kind of opportunity or any kind of reasons for them to be attacked, they would not have come up with a notification like they did. The truth is that under the garb of a notification, what you all were trying to do was trying to impose a ban on any kind of slaughter. We must understand the leather trade that we talk about, or the trade that meat trade that we talk about, does not involve cows at all. It involves water buffaloes. So this is something which the government of the day needs to realize. Now, having said that, the second part is when he speaks about political opportunism, doesn't he realize that not just the Madras High Court, in the Supreme Court has slammed that notification. So on one hand, they were using the excuse of Supreme Court asking them to frame a law. On the other hand, they want to distance themselves from what has come from, again, the Supreme Court slamming this particular move. Now the second part of it, where they say, oh, we distance ourselves from the cow vigilantism. Please, we haven't seen any kind of action taken place in any of the state governments governed by the Bharatiya Janata Party. The Prime Minister, yes, he spoke. He spoke not once, he spoke twice. Once he spoke at a town hall event where he said he wants all the state governments to come up with a register which actually notes all these kind of people who use the garb of cow protection and ends up doing mischievous acts or violent acts or attacks people, kills people under the garb of cow protection. We haven't seen any of the state governments do that. Whether it's a Pehlu Khan, whether it is the recent mob lynching that happened on a train, we haven't seen much of that happen. So words come easy, action becomes difficult for this government. And by sending out notifications like this, you're sending a very strong indirect message across that in some way, this kind of cow protectionism that we are seeing happen across the country is somehow gets a stamp of approval from the government. We haven't seen anyone denounce it. We haven't seen any action taken on that front. All the state governments have come and defended. Their spokespersons come and defend something like this. So it's, and last but not the least, even the minorities minister in an answer to the parliament goes on to say no such lynching was reported from Rajasthan, which was in the case of Pehlu Khan. So these kind of incidents send out a very strong message that somewhere or the other down the line, the government under the garb of protecting cattle, protecting animals, is actually setting an agenda which is going to be extremely inflammatory for the country in the times to come.
Okay, I'll just quickly take a question on the economics of this whole thing, and if I may go to Richard Mahapatra. And Richard, I just want to address the point about, you know, it's one thing to look at through this whole thing through the lens of religion, which perhaps both sides are doing. But I'm going to ask you the question about the damage that has been done from the time this notification was issued to now. Can that be undone? We have a 3-month window for the stay to last, and then of course the government believes those changes can be made. So I first want to ask you, can the economic damage out of this entire ban really be undone? Because it's important to remember here that this is big business. We have to tell people that livestock is not just food. It's leather. It's to control weed. It's used in many things. It's for draft. It's for fiber. It's for skin. Can that damage that has happened over this period of time be undone?
See, just to put it in perspective, I think the Supreme Court, while lifting this restriction, also made it clear that, and that quite an interesting statement, livelihood of people cannot be put into uncertainties. That must be, I think, taken into consideration. So the whole Supreme Court actually lifting the restrictions is based on this question of livelihood. Now coming to the question of how much damage it has done, I think definitely, the restrictions came, the regulations came, but much before that also the sentiment was against cattle trade, completely, blindfolded way of changing a livelihood source, which is very critical. And now if you come back to now, if you know it, in the last 3 years, more than 500 million people were impacted by droughts in India, starting from north to the south. Even now also the monsoon is uncertain. And livestock trade is the insurance against such situations. And if you, as we have been traveling and looking at, I think the whole trade, which is considered by farmer as an insurance in face of a drought or dwindling crop income, that has been damaged a lot because they are really scared to take out their cattle and to trade with it. And as far as restrictions and the new regulations are concerned, they were hardly in implementation. But, you know, the other point is also that, you know, it's very difficult to implement those regulations also. The cattle trade is a, you know, completely informal economy, though it's very evolved. It involves the smallest farmers in the world and dealing with an insurance mechanism. And we found that in the last, you know, 2 months kind of things, it has completely stopped. And particularly at a time when their farmers are out of consecutive droughts, and there is a monsoon season, but the monsoon also turning out to be uncertain now in the first week of July. So it was, I think, big damage.
Okay, Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, let me throw some numbers at you. 70% of the livestock in this country is owned by 67% of the small and marginal farmers. And I agree with Richard Mahapatra there that this in some sense, livestock in some sense is an insurance against rain-fed agriculture, which is always going to be dependent on the vagaries of nature, whether there's a rain, whether there's going to be a drought, whether there's going to be a hailstorm, which is going to destroy the crop. In that sense, do you believe in the first place the government's notification was ill thought of? Because, you know, just to put it in perspective, the livestock value is 2.5 times of the value of paddy sown and, you know, reaped in this country. It's 3 times the value of wheat. Did we kind of miss the big picture because not enough attention is paid there?
One thing I would like to tell you is those who are debating on this notification, including Priyanka, have not read the notification. It doesn't talk about cow slaughter at all. It is only for regulating the markets which have to be notified by the state government for cattle trade. It doesn't talk about only cows. It talks about regulating marketplace and avoiding cruelty towards animal. Your economic consideration, however important they may be, that cannot override the other consideration of cruelty against animal. Where does this notification talk about banning of cow slaughter? It is talking of regulating the market
Mr. Agarwal.
Trades where trade of animal takes place, the proper, the second thing is the
Mr. Agarwal, I have a point.
Will you ignore?
I have something to point out there, sir. I have something to point out there. Please let me point out something and then you can carry forward. What happens in these rural areas is that there are these small cattle markets. People get their cattle there. That is where trade of cattle happens. You know, if you allow me to put it in perspective, forget the cows that can be milked, but the non-milking animals, if you do not leave them unattended, they are going to account to about 27 crore unproductive animals. They will require about 5 lakh acres of land over the next 8 years. And that is going to be a drain on resources, on water, on fodder and everything else. I am just trying to ask you this question. Regulating of markets is one thing, but to put out a notification banning it completely is another, because rural economy is not so well regulated. There are these small cattle markets. People are afraid to go there today because they can be lynched.
No, these are two different things. Cow slaughter, people taking law into their hand through this cow vigilantism is a different issue. The issue is, why don't you quote the figures? If you go to Meerut and Noida, both sides of the highway, there are illegal slaughterhouses. There are more than thousands of slaughterhouses, illegal slaughterhouses operating in Uttar Pradesh. When Yogi Adityanath government came, they closed that. So will you tell us that we should allow illegal slaughterhouses, allow smuggling in the animals, allow cruelty to animals just to benefit only see the economic considerations? How can you be so unhuman or like that? It is not possible. Government is responsible to regulate smuggling. Government is responsible to regulate cruelty against animals. It was the previous government who did not take care of these issues because of their political considerations. we want a regulated market, we want prevention of cruelty against animals, and the state governments have put bans on cow slaughter. It is not through notification that cow slaughter is being banned. If you link all this, that's the whole thing, that nobody has read the notification and people are debating. The question is, still the government has said that we will take care of all consideration, and government has also very categorically said that the state government has to notify areas for market on which this notification will be applicable.
Okay.
And these conditions, under these
All right.
conditions, trade can take place. The government is well within the right to define the conditions under which cattle trade can take place. Where it is banning cow slaughter, how this notification you are linking to cow vigilantism, how you are linking it to
because that is what cow vigilantes have done ever since that notification came to light. I mean, I don't know if you were hibernating or not, but that's exactly what cow vigilantes have done, sir, because this notification has been used by cow vigilantes in the name of cow protection. People have been lynched, young men aboard a bus have been lynched and killed. What are you talking about? How will I not relate it? Priyanka Chaturvedi, I'll no, one second. I will have you respond to that. But I also have a question to ask of the Congress party. It's all very well. No, Priyanka Chaturvedi, I have a direct question. You can respond to that. But why has the Congress party not taken care of this for all the years it was in office? The total livestock business gets 12% of total agri expenditure, public agri expenditure. It gets only 4 to 5% of institutional credit. 6% of livestock is all that is insured in this country. The rot did not start now. The rot was well within when you were in government. Why did you not do anything about it?
No, not doing anything about what, cow slaughter, or about prevention of cruelty to animals? What context are we speaking about? I mean, just because
about taking care of livestock in this country,
the previous government to this government and try to give them a window of escape. No, please, we must understand that the Supreme Court has given them an order today and they have totally slammed that the notification that came from this government. Let's hold them accountable. It's been over 3 years since they've been in power. They could have done a lot more if they believe and they are so committed to all this. And maybe if we did everything wrong and they were out here to set everything right, the Supreme Court begs to differ. And all I'd like to mention here, I do not know with what confidence Mr. Gopal Agarwal keeps saying that nobody has read the notification and we are coming and debating about this. No, the discussion is not just about cows, but cows became a tool after this notification to catch hold of any and every person who is supposed to be carrying out an official trade and to be beaten up. Now please, sir, I have a few questions for you. Do you know how much is the meat and allied industry trade market, trade in India? How much of it accounts for in India?
Sir, why illegal?
And how do they source their leather materials for this particular trade? No, it is not illegal slaughterhouses. I'm talking about legal trade. 1 lakh crore trade, worth of trade, you've jeopardized because of something that you believe in. Secondly, I would like to mention to you, I just have a simple question to you. So today a small marginal farmer wants to sell an old buffalo who is no longer useful to him.
Right.
How does he go and sell it? Please understand, your notification categorically banned any kind of sale for slaughter. It was, and even if it was for milching, you're supposed to get a letter signed saying that this particular sale is happening for XYZ reason, only for milching.
Yes.
So please, I would want to understand, how would you help a farmer sell his cattle if not through the regulated trade market that we are seeing? And 90% of the material that goes into the trade, the creation of trade that we have around the leather industry, around the meat industry, comes from these markets. So when you put a ban on these markets, you must tell us what was the economics behind what you just did. You cannot run behind, oh, we were trying to regulate it, or we were trying to stop smuggling, because you've done neither.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm completely run out of time. I would have had a longer discussion on this, but I've completely run out of time here. Thank you very much for being with us. I think this is a question that all of us need to ponder over. When bans like these come and when the Supreme Court slams, we all have to see the politics behind this. And we've got to realize there is livelihood that's dependent on it. 8.8% of India's population depends on that livelihood. Can we ignore that completely? But thank you very much for all of you joining in. We do hope this issue will not be looked through the lens of religion, but that's Indian politics, and so be it. Thank you very much for being with us.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.